Our next guest is Toph Evans. He's a best-selling author. He's an international keynote speaker, resilience thought leader. We're going to be chatting really about dealing with stressful situations in the workplace. However, I want to talk about your sporting prowess and the fact that you are known from, hang on a minute, you ran down Mount Everest.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's the most highest legal point you can really go from. And so essentially I did a climb to about just below Camp 2, but the race started from Everest Base Camp. And it was an ultra marathon, right? They have a half, a full, and an ultra. The ultra was about 62K or something. And what I thought was going to be a downhill race was just as much uphill. And your lungs are like failing as it is. There's just dust. There's yak poop everywhere. And you're like, this is survival because I can't really pull out. What am I going to do? Call a helicopter? And I have no reception anyway.
And you know, you've got people that are relying on you to do this. So,
Totally.
you couldn't. I think the shame would be worse than not being able to call a helicopter if you didn't do it.
Yeah. That's it. Like, there was one point where the guy I did it with, we had the chance to stay in a lodge and then finish it the next day and get penalized for 3 hours. And we thought, how much more badass would it be to just keep going throughout the night? You know what, man? My headlight was running out of battery. I had no food, no water at this point. Well, let's just get to the end. It could be worse, right?
Yeah,
it could always be worse. And I get to do what I do, not I have to do it. That's a good paradigm shift. I get to instead I have to.
And that's the absolute joy. So obviously you've got a sporting background, you've got a fitness background.
Yeah, the thing is, I was never a sporty kid at school. I was a kid that always got picked last, funnily enough, because my hand-eye coordination is horrendous.
Okay.
I didn't really like running, but I started running because of my mental health. And then from there, I figured out if I can learn to control the little person in my head that says, you should stop, your lungs are failing, well, this, you know what, just focus on getting to the next light post. Focus on little small wins, because I'd lost a fair bit in, like, with adversity, that for me, I just wanted to get this back. And I've learnt that, why don't I just adopt this mindset with life's adversity too? And so for me, I really doubled down on this because I'm figuring out how to integrate where I can have my social, my lifestyle, my health, my well-being all tied in one thing. And it's like running's been a big part of my life from that.
And you hear that a lot. You know, we talk to people on the show that have had mental health issues, in particular depression. And, you know, first of all, the hard thing is getting out there. That's the difficult thing, to get up out of bed and actually do something. Mm-hmm. But once they're out there and they realise, hang on a minute, and as you say, small steps. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can get from here to the shop across the street or down the bottom.
100%, man.
And then next time we're going to go a little bit further and further. And just, you know, what people don't do, they don't look at the surroundings. They don't see what's around them. You know, even if you're out there walking, you're looking at the ground and whatever, people need to sort of open their eyes a bit, and clearly that's helped you.
Man, you nailed it. You got to build a crescendo. Like, you want to start super small, and it's not about, you got to remove comparison straight up. Like, you can't compare yourself to anyone else's journey because the circumstances are different from the start.
Sure.
So I can't compare myself to any other runner, author, speaker, thought leader, whatever. It's just about being the best version of myself. You know, I can collaborate with those other people and we can help each other out. Yeah. But for me, I had a lot of social anxiety at one point. Let's just focus on getting out the door. Come back. Now let's focus on doing around the block. Now it's 1K. All right, and then it worked up, all right, let's do a marathon. And then, wait, they have things called 100-kilometer ultramarathons and then 100-milers. And then it's just constantly building and building and building. But I'm doing it for myself. But you know what, if this can inspire someone to get off the couch and do 2K today, or if this can inspire someone to break their own limits, maybe there's that business idea they've always wanted to do. And it's using perspective, not comparison. You know what, if this guy can run all these Ks and whatever and do it for a nice cause, maybe I can do something of what I think is possible too. Like, we're all limitless creatures.
Many people, and again, we've chatted to a lot of people that go out and they do a job not because they want to do it, because they have to do it. They have to earn money. They find that the workplace can be a stressful situation. There might be bullying in the workplace. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you talk about is just those situations.
Yeah, it's true. Like, that's what I was saying before. Like, I get to do what I do instead I have to do it. And it could always be worse. Like, I've got a big race coming up, and for me, I'm doing it I'm actually really excited for it because I get to see how deep I have to dig. And I know it's going to make me stronger. It's called purposeful suffering. Not to sound like a masochistic, or I call it simulated adversity. I've found where in a lot of first world countries like Australia, America, Canada, a lot of Europe and UK, we have everything so easily accessible, right? But the moment we come across any adversity, it's no longer habitual because we have it so easily. We have sushi trains that bring us food, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And when I've been to the slums of Brazil, I've trekked through the PNG jungle, I've ran through the Nepalese Himalayas. Some of them are the most poorest people I've ever come across, but they're the most grateful because they know what it's like to have nothing. So they just focus on the fundamentals, right? Food, shelter, water, family, and close friends, which are close-knit family. But anything else they come across is bonus. There was a guy in the slums of Brazil that gave me, he offered me into his house and food. He had missing an arm and a leg. And I'm like, this poor dude has nothing. So he knows what it's like to have nothing. Yeah. So for me, he's been through the adversity, so he truly understands the value of something when it's taken away from him.
Well, I had a similar story. As you know, we were chatting off air, and we did a job in Lagos once, many years ago.
Yeah.
And Lagos is probably one of the poorest parts of the world in Nigeria. And we met this guy. We were sort of outside at lunchtime, quite a dangerous place. But anyway, we were outside at lunchtime, and we met this guy, and he lived on the central reservation of a highway. So in the middle of a dual carriageway in a hole in the ground. And he slept under a tarpaulin, and he used a local hotel to have a wash and whatever. This man was not bitter. He just said, this is my life and I have to make the most of it. And exactly what you've said, it could be worse. And he said, it could be worse. At least I have my health and I have, wow. And it makes you feel very humble.
Totally.
Because you're right, we're actually spoiled. To put it, in less than polite, we are spoiled as a society.
That's it.
And we could talk about the way that we're bringing up kids as well, we're spoiling them too, but that's not why we're here today. So to have somebody like yourself, you're a young fellow, and to have this attitude of, do you know what, I'm going to push myself and to try and inspire others, I think that's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And it is a big topic is how do I be more happy, right? Remove that. That's a byproduct, actually. Focus on being grateful. The happiness will come. So one thing I like to do every morning is say 3 things or write 3 things down what I'm grateful for. And before I go to bed too. And so I put myself in the right mindset before I wake up. If anyone wants a cool challenge, write down 100 things you're grateful for.
Goodness.
What happens is you get to number 40 and you're like, I don't know what else. I'm grateful that my coffee cup has a handle so I don't burn myself.
Yeah.
And you realize once you finish it, I'm grateful I can see colors where some people can't. It makes you realize how well you actually have it. And that's going to change your definition of reality if by practice, making that a habit, because you focus on what you have, not what you're missing. Or else you're going to be constantly chasing that tail and you're not going to be content with your well-being.
And again, going back to the workplace, even people that are not particularly happy in the workplace, I guess if they do that, all right, so I don't like this, but he's 20, 30, 40, 100. I couldn't do that. I would find that really difficult to sit down and do 100 things that I was grateful for.
Yeah,
apart from the fact that it let me get away with this on a Monday morning. That's the thing I'm most grateful for.
Well, dude, what happens is you start going, I'm grateful for the demons I went through, because if I didn't go through all that stress, I would not be in this exact position. I would not have shaped me as a person. And it makes it more of a badass story too. When you've gone through more setbacks, it's focus being the comeback. That's what it's about.
And I appreciate that. I mean, again, I'd sort of emphasise the fact for people that can't see because it's radio. You are a young fellow, and to have had what you call your demons, and clearly you've dealt with depression, you've dealt with things, and that voice that we used to call it Captain Paranoia, who sits on your left shoulder and goes, you can't do it, you're not good enough for that. To have come through that, did you have outside help? Did you do it by yourself?
It was a blend of everything, right? I had a few coping mechanisms, I should say that. But that was to mask who I was as a person. I wasn't happy with the person I was. I would wake up trying to be someone else. It also changed. I became a total jerk. I'll admit that.
But were you aware of that, or were your friends saying, "Do you know what? You're starting to behave like a jerk now"?
It wasn't until actually friends were telling me this, but they're telling you in a way that it's biased. That they tell you what you kind of want to hear.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until strangers were giving me direct feedback, and it was blunt and it was brutal. And it's like, damn, how did I get to this moment in life? And it was a bunch of adversity that really bottled up. Have you ever seen when you put a Mentos in a Coke bottle and it causes that chemical reaction?
I have.
I was the Coke bottle.
Okay.
And I was imploding. And I've learnt to be a lot more vulnerable, or that word seems to catch on to a few people where it's like, I don't want to be vulnerable because I'm letting my guard down. And now people can take a stab at it because we thrive off security.
But also that's a man thing.
It is. So if we replace the word vulnerability with sharing, because sharing, if you go back to the origin of it, it means to give. And humans are wired to give and to connect. So if you share what's in your mind, it's removing that preconceived notion that it's a weak move. You know what's weak? Imploding.
Absolutely, because if you bottle it up, eventually something's got to give.
That's going to be much worse, actually.
And that's why I get frustrated when, and you know, we've done this as an experiment. We had the Are You OK Day. You know,
Yes.
and it's okay to say you're not okay.
Totally.
But the average person, hi, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? End of conversation.
Totally.
If you say to that person, do you know what? I'm having a really rough day today. I'm struggling. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because your mind is conditioned to, they're going to say okay, and I'll say okay, and everything's fine. So I think it's having, I would say, not just vulnerability, but being honest.
100%, man. And you know what? When you're the other person listening to that person struggling, a lot of attentive listening helps.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes what they need to is let them get it out. Like if you look at the mind as if it's an attic, funnily enough, they're both at the top of that structure. Like the mind is where the head is, and the attic's at the top of the house. If you've got things in there that are going to rust, rot, and depreciate, it's going to cause termites. And if your attic is full, you can't put anything else in there. So you got to declutter it, man. And that's about, sometimes that process of just talking about it is going to cause a lot of tears. Get it out now before it magnifies. All right, good example. This coffee cup that I got in my hand that you can see, that no one else can see, weighs about, I don't know, like 250 grams. If I were to hold on to this for 24 hours straight, it would feel like 250 kilograms. Profoundly enough, it's still 250 grams. Now, we do that with the thoughts in our mind. Whether they're yelling or they're whispering, they're the same volume, if you think about it. But it's like as if the whispers turn into yells because we're holding on to it for... And then it feels like a 500 kilogram weight.
Sure.
And then it magnifies into 1,000. Then people go, I feel so lethargic and I haven't done anything because you spent too busy worrying on the things that cause mental termites. So that's why it's okay to speak about it. And the thing with, I've seen a lot of guys, especially guys, because it's considered a weak move to talk about this stuff, when I think it's a power move because it shows humility and it inspires, it makes other people not feel alone. But one thing in particular, one sec.
It'll come back to you.
I just lost my train of thought.
That's all right. One thing in particular always happens to me. So you lose your train of thought. You talk about humility. I think it's humanity. I think when people are open and you go, do you know what? I'm finding this really difficult to deal with. I think that's the first step. And it's being honest with yourself as well. And that's the hardest thing. Because you go through life trying to be all things to all people, and one day you wake up, you're going, I can't do that. I've got to look after me now. Nothing wrong with that.
No, I agree. And I've found like the deep, meaningful relationships are the ones where you can just be so open about it, right? Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
Oh, good. Welcome back. You're back in the room now.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm just going to have a sip of coffee first.
Have another. It's now 260 grams. It's getting heavier, that cup of coffee, as we go.
I'm drinking it as we go. And... It's really tough at first. It really is tough. But for me, I'm just passing it down to be that catalyst to help other guys and women too. It's not just females. It's showing that we are all human and no one is really perfect. But it's removing that ego and it's humanizing it again because we are wired for connection. Humans are neurobiologically wired for connection. The moment we feel alone somehow, no, I'm not talking about being single. I'm talking about the feeling of disconnect, that causes more harm than anything, man. That emotional pain it really sucks. So it's just about being there for people, like attentive listening if you see someone struggling, just so they can get it out. So it just doesn't magnify into something worse. Sometimes
people just need to rant. If people want to find out a little bit more about you or they want to see you speak, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So my website is TOFE-EVANS.com, and everything's on there from... where you can see me speak, my bio, my book, that if you want to grab a copy of that. And I'm also there to make people more resilient. So I've also got a program too if people are interested.
So there you go. 38081101. If you did miss those details, we can put you guys in touch. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm glad you found your chain of thought again, because sometimes I have 3 hours on a Monday morning. I'm still looking for it. But there you go. Thank you so much for coming in. Thanks to our good friend Mark Grant as well for connecting both of us.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Good luck with everything you do.
Thanks, mate.
So if you want to know more, once again, if anything that we're chatting about got you interested, 38081101 is our number here.